Empires don't rise and fall because of armies alone. They rise with armies, but they endure, expand, and ultimately survive only because of money, cold, hard, flowing, invisible money. And if you peel back the colorful pages of history, you'll find that behind almost every single major war, revolution, or peace treaty for the last 600 years, there were a handful of quiet, extremely sharp banking families who never once stepped onto a battlefield, never swung a sword, never fired a cannon, yet they decided which kings stayed on their thrones, which nations went bankrupt, and which empires got to live another century. It all started in the 1400s in the sun-drenched streets of Florence, Italy, with a family called the Medici. Giovanni de' Medici opened a bank in 1397 and did something revolutionary. He invented the letter of credit. Before that, if you wanted to buy silk in Venice and pay in Paris, you had to carry chests of gold across bandit-filled roads. The Medici said, "No need, just carry this piece of paper that says we'll pay." Suddenly, trade exploded across Europe. Their bank grew to 15 branches from London to Rome. They loaned money to popes, to English kings, to French dukes, and in return, they basically owned Florence for 60 years without ever holding an official title. Cosimo de' Medici and his grandson Lorenzo the Magnificent were the real rulers. They paid Michelangelo's bills, paid for Leonardo da Vinci's workshop, paid Botticelli to paint masterpieces. The entire Renaissance, the greatest explosion of art and science the world had ever seen, was quietly funded by bankers sitting in back offices, counting gold florins. The Medici proved that money doesn't just buy things. It buys beauty, ideas, culture, and political power without anyone noticing. A century later in Germany, one man took this game to a whole new level. Jacob Fugger, Jacob the Rich. In today's money, he was worth over $400 billion, richer than Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Warren Buffett combined. In 1519, there was an election for the next Holy Roman Emperor, basically the most powerful man in Europe. The candidates were bribing voters left and right, but one man, Charles V, didn't have enough cash, until Jakob Fugger wrote the biggest check in history up to that point, nearly 1 million gold guilders in bribes. Charles won, and in return, Fugger got control of silver mines in Austria, copper mines in Hungary, and mercury mines in Spain. Mines that printed money for decades. Kings and emperors literally owed their crowns to a merchant from Augsburg. Fugger also built the world's first private intelligence network, agents in every port and capital sending handwritten letters twice a week about crop prices, troop movements, even which king was sick. He knew things weeks before governments did. Information plus money equals unstoppable power. Fast forward to the 1700s and 1800s, and the center of financial gravity moved to London with the Baring family. People openly called Baring brothers the sixth great power of Europe, right after Britain, France, Russia, Prussia, and Austria. In 1803, something insane happened. The United States wanted to buy the Louisiana Territory from France. $15 million, an absolute bargain that doubled the size of America overnight. But the young U.S. government didn't have 15 million lying around. So who paid? Baring Brothers in London. A British bank financed the biggest land deal in American history. A few years later, during the Napoleonic Wars, Britain was fighting for its life against Napoleon. The Navy, the Army, the spies, everything ran on loans from, you guessed it, Baring Brothers. When the Duke of Wellington crushed Napoleon at Waterloo in 1815, the victory wasn't just British courage. It was British courage paid for by a London banking house, writing checks faster than the French could reload their cannons. And then came the final boss, the family everyone still whispers about today, the Rothschilds. Meyer Amschel Rothschild started as a small coin dealer in the Jewish ghetto of Frankfurt in the 1760s. He had 5 sons and a genius plan. Send one son to each major capital, London, Paris, Vienna, Naples, and keep the original in Frankfurt. For the first time in history, you had a single family that could move gold, credit, and information across borders faster than any king, general, or postal service. Their private couriers on horseback and carrier pigeons beat government messengers by days. The most famous story is Waterloo, 1815. Nathan Rothschild in London got the news that Napoleon lost a full day before the British government did. Legend says he went to the stock exchange, pretended Britain had lost, panicked the markets, bought government bonds for pennies, and when the real victory news hit, he made a fortune in hours. Even if the story's exaggerated, the truth is scarier. The Rothschilds financed both sides of many wars, Britain against Napoleon, and sometimes even Napoleon himself through their Paris branch. Because whoever won, the loans had to be repaid with interest. They helped Brazil gain independence, helped Britain buy shares in the Suez Canal, and by the late 1800s, their family name was on more government bonds than any flag in the world. These four families, Medici, Fugger, Baring, Rothschild, never started a single war, but they decided how long those wars lasted, who ran out of money first, and who got to rebuild afterward. They invented the tools we still use today: government bonds, international letters of credit, fast cross-border payments, private intelligence networks, and the simple but brutal truth that when a country is broke, the bankers become more powerful than the president or the king. Armies march on their stomachs, yes, but nations march on credit. Cannons are loud, battles are dramatic, history books are full of heroes on horseback, but the real decisions, the ones that actually shape the world map you see today, were made in quiet offices by men in suits moving numbers from one column to another, deciding which empire got to breathe for another decade and which one quietly collapsed into chaos. That game never ended. It just changed names and moved to Wall Street, the Federal Reserve, the IMF, BlackRock, and the big investment funds that today own more of America than Americans do. The families changed, the tools got faster, but the rule is exactly the same. Whoever controls the money supply controls the country, and whoever controls the money supply of many countries controls the world. The swords are gone, the crowns are in museums, but the ledger never sleeps. And that, more than anything else, is the real story of power.